One. Hey guys, Michael Hyatt here. Welcome to the weekly show. I'm really excited tonight because I've got my special guest and buddy Rory Vaden on. We're going to be talking about self-discipline, procrastination, and just executing on your dreams. So I've got a few things to set up. This is the pre-show, so hang with me. I would encourage you guys right now to share the show. So if you're watching on Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, just share it out. This is going to be an incredible show. You're going to want to share it with your friends. I promise they're going to thank you afterwards. So go ahead and share it now, and we're going to get to the show here at the top of the hour, but this will give people a chance to get on. So I'm going to just go to Facebook here on my comment cam and make sure, actually, I see it here. This is cool. Okay, so I'm going to click on the video and get that launched. Philip, I see you from Pittsburgh, and Kent from Dallas. This is on Facebook. Andy from Sydney, Australia. Luria, see you on. That's fantastic. And on Periscope, I finally have the comments working so that I can read them on Periscope. I'm so pumped about this. So I've got Anxiety by JJ, who's on. Aircoop Gal from Wichita, Nancy. And she also said, Aircoop Gal said, I love Rory. And Elizabeth said, I just brought Procrastinate on Purpose on Thursday. Can't wait to get started. Phenomenal book. You're going to love it. Okay, nothing on YouTube yet. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, let me know so that I can see your comments here. But I got one comment for you, or one question I want to ask you as we get started. Where are you watching from? So I'm in Nashville tonight. It's a very rainy night in Nashville. I think it might rain all week. I'm pumped about this week, though, because I'm leaving for vacation on Thursday, and I'm going to be out for 10 days. So Gail and I are going to go to East Tennessee to the Smoky Mountains, and then we're going to go come back here to Nashville and have a little staycation, but pretty excited about that. Okay, so back to Periscope here. We've got Diane from Canada, Joshua from Brazil, Carrie from California. Oh, this is amazing. Kim from Chicago. B2I Wisdom from Illinois, Carrie from Sacramento, Mr. Wilson Gill from the Gold Coast of Australia. Back here on Facebook, Bob Moss watching from Seaside, Oregon. Fantastic. Dale. I'm not sure where you're from, Dale. I don't see that here. Ion also from Brazil. We've had a lot of folks on from Brazil recently. Fantastic. Mike from Johannesburg, South Africa. Sari from Brandon, Florida. Shelley from the west coast of Canada. Love the west coast of Canada, particularly British Columbia. Jessica from Tampa. Awesome, guys. So I'm glad to see that that's working. Okay, I've got another question for you. And this is going to really set up our topic for tonight. Because again, I'm going to be talking to Rory Vaden, who's the author of Take the Stairs and Procrastinate on Purpose. He's a New York Times best-selling author. I'm going to give him a proper introduction once we get done with the pre-show. But this is just giving a chance for people to get on. So while you're watching now, please share the show. So if you're on Facebook, on YouTube, or Periscope, please share it out. I'd be so grateful because I'd love to get as many people on this as possible just because I know it's going to be helpful. Rory's always terrific, and this content is going to be fantastic. Okay, this question. Do you struggle with procrastination? Be honest. Let's pretend this is the honest planet, okay? Do you struggle with procrastination? And where does it tend to show up for you, okay? And so I'm going to go first. I do struggle with procrastination. I mean, I have people tell me that I'm one of the most productive people they know, but I do struggle with procrastination. I struggle to get going with new projects. And that's one of the reasons why I establish hard deadlines that involve other people whom I know are going to show up so that I have to show up. But sometimes it's like 48 hours before I have to do something that I really get my nose into it and get it done. So yeah, I struggle with procrastination. Now, part of that's good, I think, and you're going to see that as we talk to Rory. Procrastination can be, if it's intentional and on purpose, it can be a good thing. Rory will have more to say about that. But yeah, I struggle with procrastination. So what about you guys? So go to Periscope here. Yeah, Carrie said, his answer to a question from Dimitrios, I believe he's using Livestream's production system. Indeed, I am. That's exactly what I'm using. Okay, so Eric Coop Gal Nancy says, okay, maybe when I'm headed into the unknown. Yoheved says, I do when I gave all my energy to everybody else. Boy, that's the truth, isn't it? I mean, it's really easy to procrastinate when you've got people that are kind of, I hate to use this, kind of derogatory, but emotional vampires. You know, they're sucking the life out of you. And it's easy to just not having energy left for your own projects. I don't suffer from that, thankfully, because I don't let those people surround me. Back over here to Facebook, Katrina says, absolutely, when I face something that is really important. Luria says, I struggle with procrastination only for certain things when I perceive it's a complicated, whoops, lost the comment, task. I think that's what that was. Shelley said, yes, when the push is done or the urgent is over, it can be a challenge to get the momentum felt again. So true. You know, sometimes I'm such a startup person, such an entrepreneur, that I usually have a lot of energy the first time I do something. I mean, yes, I procrastinate to get started, but then I have a lot of energy about it. But the real challenge is to keep things going. You know, once I've got it going, it's kind of like, okay, what's next? So that's just me. Let me go back here again. Kenneth says no Periscope link. Well, if you go to michaelhyatt.com/Periscope, what do I say? Periscope.com/Michael Hyatt. There we go. Then you'll see the live show there on Periscope. Periscope.com/Michael Hyatt. Katrina says, absolutely, when I face something that is really important. Donald said, dealing with email, trying to clean them out. Back over to Periscope, Dimitro said, I procrastinate when I'm not sure what to do next. And Carrie said, tasks I just don't want to do. Okay, so I got another question for you. I'm going to go back to the main camera here so that I can see it. And it's this. What strategies have worked best for you in terms of overcoming procrastination? And I just shared one of my own, which is to set a hard deadline that involves other people. Because like one of my things that I never want to do is I never want to let down other people. And I also don't like being embarrassed. So if everybody else has done their work and they show up and I'm not prepared, that's embarrassing. And so that's a great point of leverage for me to get me to do things that I might otherwise not do, or I might tend to just kind of wait forever. So like last summer, I was creating my new course, Free to Focus. And we had a hard launch date on that. And man, I kept procrastinating all year getting started, finally got started. And I thought it would take me 2 weeks of recording and all the rest to get it done. It ended up taking 6 weeks. But I guarantee you, I was not going to let anybody down. So we launched it on time, even though the preparation of that took too long. So that's one of my hacks, hard deadlines that involve other people. So let me go back to the comment cam, and I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the strategies that you've used? By the way, we've got some people showing up on YouTube now. Steve Martin from Evansville and Rachel from Texas, Sheena from the Philippines, and we've got David Foster, Geeks Life. He said, I struggle with it too, just in general. Starting new things is scary sometimes. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe just the fear of it or the fear of thinking about it. So Wilson said a list of tasks with due dates. Excellent. Carrie says this on Periscope. He's just quoting my Periscope channel, periscope.tv. I should know that, but I didn't. Periscope.tv/Michael Hyatt. Joshua, forcing myself to do it. Blessed to impress wisdom. I procrastinate when I don't know what to do. Back over to Facebook. He says hello from San Diego. Clay says, signing up for a marathon forces me to run. Otherwise, I won't. Exactly. That's how I ran my first half marathon. I signed up for it, and I had to make it happen. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the main camera because we've got 12 seconds before we're going to start the show, and I cannot wait to introduce this topic and this guest. Thanks for joining us. Please share. Before we start the program, I want to ask you one more time, please share this with your friends. I would love for you to do that. Okay. For most people, procrastination is a negative word, right? It's what keeps us from starting, maybe sometimes even finishing important tasks and projects. And whether we're overworked, organizationally challenged, or have a motivation issue that's holding us back, millions of us are struggling to get things done. Well, is it that all procrastination is bad? Well, my guest tonight is Rory Vaden. He's the author of a book called Procrastinate on Purpose. And in the book, he presents the 5 permissions that set us free to do our best work on time and without wasting energy, battling stress and anxiety. Hello, I'm Michael Hyatt. Welcome to my live show where each week I talk with a different thought leader about some aspect of personal productivity, development, or leadership. And my goal is to help you win at work, succeed at life, and lead with confidence. Let's get started. Rory Vaden is a self-discipline strategist. Love that. He speaks to audiences around the world about how they can leverage self-discipline to overcome procrastination and achieve their goals in life. He's a New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today best-selling author. Rory speaks more than 50 times a year for some of America's best and brightest organizations. Get this, he's the 2007 Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking first runner-up. Rory, welcome to the show. Great to see you, my friend.
Hey, Michael. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this topic because I have so many people that tell me they struggle with self-discipline or they struggle with procrastination. But let's just start at the very beginning. How do you define self-discipline?
Well, the way I always frame it is, I like to ask people, the last time that you were walking along and you were in a mall or an airport or something and you came up to a set of escalators and some stairs, did you take the stairs? And, for most of us, we don't. We choose the escalator. And we use that as a metaphor for defining procrastination because I think, self-discipline is really about doing the things we know we should be doing, even when we don't feel like doing them. And so that is how we define it. And I think, that's at Southwestern Consulting, that's what we do. We study successful people. We coach. We're really a coaching company. We do one-on-one coaching. And as we work with all of these clients, we see that the most successful people in the world, it's not that they're smarter than other people. It's not that they're more educated. It doesn't matter what their race or their ethnicity or their gender or their age. But none of those things really ultimately determine how successful someone is. But the one thing that every single successful person has in common is that successful people have formed the habit of doing things they know they should be doing, even when they don't feel like doing them.
Wow. Fantastic. Have you ever heard of Andy Andrews' definition of discipline, self-discipline? He says this. You've probably heard this because I know you're friends.
I think I've heard it, but I don't think I can recite it. Yeah, but
okay.
We're friends for sure.
So he says this. He says, self-discipline is the ability to make yourself do something you don't want to do for the sake of a result you really want to get. And I think that's a good example. I mean, it's kind of like, you and I have both written books, and I don't particularly enjoy the writing process, especially getting started is challenging. But I love having written. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. With books specifically?
Yeah, with books specifically.
Yeah, I actually enjoy writing books. The part that I don't like as much actually is selling the book and having to do like the whole promotional strategy and arranging all of that. And Robert Kiyosaki said it's not called New York Times best writing author, it's New York Times best selling author. And so that is something that I've always embraced and thought, I have to work as hard at telling people about the book as I did to write the book. And, fortunately our, team at Southwestern helps a lot with that. But I agree 100%, Michael, that there's always, in anything that we want to do, anything that we want to have, any part about the person we want to become requires us to do certain things that we don't want to do. And the only key difference between the people who get those things, they get those dreams, those titles, those accomplishments, they grow those companies, those charities, they make that impact, is that some people, very small percentage, people that we refer to as multipliers or ultra performers, they have developed this sort of capability to coach themselves through that part. And Take the Stairs, our first book, is really just these 7 misconceptions that people have about self-discipline. And I think one of the reasons why that book has sort of propagated so well throughout the business community is because people realize, perhaps for the first time, that self-discipline isn't as hard as we all think once we know how to think about it the right way. And so the next level of results always requires the next level of thinking. And if we can change our thinking about it, then we can change our behaviors and ultimately change our results.
That's good. So what are some of those misconceptions that people have about self-discipline?
Well, I think the biggest misconception that people have, I don't know if misconception is quite the right word, is we think of it as hard, right? Like we just go, oh, discipline, yuck. That seems painful, and I don't want to learn about discipline. I don't like it. And the best way to illustrate this is a story, and it's from where I grew up. I grew up in Colorado. And in Colorado, we are world famous for the Rocky Mountains. And this has become one of our favorite stories because it illustrates the difference between ultra performers and everybody else so well. Because to the western part of the state, we have the Great Rocky Mountains. And that's what most people think of when they think about Colorado. But what a lot of people don't realize is that as a state, Colorado is divided almost exactly in half. And to the eastern part of the state are the Great Kansas Plains. And because of this unique topographical landscape, Colorado is one of the only places in the world that has both buffalo and cows. And there is a fabulous lesson to learn from studying the way that these two creatures respond to storms. So when the storms come, storms almost always brew kind of from the west, and then they roll out towards the east. And what cows do is very natural. A cow can sense that a storm is coming from this direction, and so the cow will try to run east to get away from the storm. Now, the only problem with that is that if you know anything about cows, you know they're not real fast. And so as they try to run away from the storm catches up with them rather quickly. And so instead of outrunning the storm, they run with the storm, which maximizes the amount of pain and time and frustration that they experience from that storm, which is so stupid, right? It's just
exactly.
Silly. But the humans, Michael, we are exactly the same way. We spend so much of our lives constantly trying to avoid the inevitable challenges that come along with these sort of difficult circumstances or situations that we find ourselves in. And I speak here from personal experience that there was a time in my life where I had over $50,000 in personal debt. That's how I met Dave Ramsey. There was a time when I was 45 pounds heavier than I am right now.
Wow.
And I have made lots and lots of different mistakes with starting businesses and in sales and personal relationships. And the key insight that ultra performers have made that most of us have not, at least not consciously, is ultra performers realize that problems that are procrastinated on are only amplified. Problems procrastinate on are amplified. So waiting makes it worse. So this idea of self-discipline is hard. It's not really that it is hard. It's that it is hard now, but it's easier later. Another way that we say it is that procrastination is nothing more than a creditor that charges you interest.
Perfect.
And so we pay the price now today, and it becomes easier later on. And that's what buffalo do. So in the story, it's not really a story, it's just sort of a truth of nature, is when storms come, what buffalo do is instead of running away from the storm east, they turn and they run west. And so they charge directly at the storm. And by running at the storm, they run straight through it, which minimizes the amount of pain they experience. And that, as you know, is just like your story about being an author or anybody that you've ever had on this show. That is what ultra performers do. You have to be the buffalo. You charge directly into the storm, not because you like it, not because you are. It's not some weird masochistic, pleasure for pain that we're talking about. It's that easy short-term choices lead to difficult long-term consequences, and difficult short-term choices lead to easy long-term consequences.
That's an awesome story. The first time I ever heard you tell that story was, I think, the first time that you and I met face to face, which was on a cruise that that Dan Miller was sponsoring. And I heard you give that story, and I thought, man, that's so great. I wish I had a T-shirt that said "Be the Buffalo." Do you sell those?
Yeah, so we need to sell them. We don't have them. We have lots of other products and trinkets that don't sell very well, so maybe we should cash those in and get a Be the Buffalo Be the Buffalo T-shirt.
Okay, I'm going to jump over the comments here for a second, because I know we're getting a lot of comments from all three platforms, and I don't want to neglect the people that are watching. So let me just take a look here. Actually, these are just all comments where people are just saying, great stuff. You know, they're loving the illustration. Terrific. People love the buffalo and the cow story. That's great. Okay, no questions yet. So, super. We'll wait till those start coming in. Okay, so any other misconceptions you want to talk about? I don't expect you to talk about all 7. People can go buy the book, which is Take the Stairs. But any other misconceptions just to kind of whet people's appetite?
Well, one of the other ones that I would just mention is it's called the buy-in principle of commitment. And I won't go into it too much here, though, is that people often think we typically keep our commitments. And when we make a commitment, we think that we make real commitments. But typically what we do is we make commitments conditionally. And we keep our commitments as long as they are convenient to do so. And in the sort of escalator world, what happens is the moment it becomes inconvenient to follow through or keep a commitment, we typically start to question ourselves. Or we say, maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe this isn't the right decision. Maybe I'm not at the right company. Maybe I'm not married to the right person. Maybe I'm not the right person. And we typically start to sort of challenge our commitment, and we start to convince ourselves that maybe things would be easier someplace else, somewhere else, with somebody else. And what ultra performers know is that the more we have invested into something, the less likely we are to let it fail. So it's another example here of sort of this paradox of the mindset of ultra performers, where most people would sort of say, when things get difficult, maybe I'm not in the right place. Ultra performers, that's where they would double down. That's where they would increase their investment. And so they are the people who spend more money on personal development, right? I mean, that's
right.
The people. We have a guy on my podcast on Wednesday who's one of our coaching clients, and he'll tell the story about how the reason he signed up was because he was so scared, and he he said, I don't want to do this. I don't want someone holding me accountable. And because he heard himself say that, he said, I have to do it, because if I'm scared of it, that's how I know that it is good for me.
I love that.
So whether it's with making an investment of some type into your business, or it's pursuing some goal that you are terrified of, it's just another example of sort of this flip. It's opposite of how you might think. And one of the strategies there, well, I guess we can talk through some of the strategies, but the strategy there is, you want to, instead of asking yourself, is this possible? Can I do it? Should I do it? You shift the thinking to say, how? How can I do this? How can I pull this off? How would it be possible? What would it take? Rather than evaluating, is it possible? You ask, how could it be possible? And that moment is where we sort of transcend all the limitations.
That's so good.
In our creativity engages. And so those are two of the seven, just to kind of touch quickly on them.
I love that. I remember hearing Tony Robbins say several times, if you think you can't, then you must. Because those things where we think we can't, if we don't engage with those things, then they become limiting beliefs and really hold us back. And usually it's nothing more than our thinking that's holding us back. And I heard another question that I love, that I sometimes ask myself when I'm in that very same situation, which is, what would have to be true for this to come to pass? So, for example, I was talking to this nutritionist that I go to, and she found out that Gail and I, every summer, we go on a 30-day sabbatical. And she said, oh, man, I wished I could do that, but I just can't. The demands of my practice are such. And so I said to her, what would have to be true in order for you to do that? And she said, well, I guess I'd have to have enough savings, and I'd have to have, somebody manage the practice while I was gone. I'd have to schedule my patients. So she started getting creative to make it happen. Well, she just told me last time I went with her, she said, I didn't do 30 days, but I did 2 weeks in Italy. And if I hadn't gone through that exercise of thinking what had to be true for me to do that, it would have never happened. And then I love this. She said, this next summer, I'm taking 30 days. It's going to happen.
I love it.
Yeah. So it was great. Those questions make all the difference.
What you said, Michael, is exactly right. It's the barriers, the limitations are, we think they're real.
Right.
We think they are real, but they're not really real. They exist in our mind. We are prisoners of our own construction. And it's you have to break free of that thinking. And that's why I think, kudos to everybody who's watching, because you say, how do you do that? Well, you do that by reading books and surrounding yourself with mentors and coaches and being around people who think at a level that is, sort of past a level up from those barriers. And you kind of become that way by just being around it. And, so obviously they're here being, they're practicing that.
Okay, guys, I want to encourage you to ask your questions of Rory about self-discipline. You're here. He's here. Why not? Ask your questions about self-discipline. This is your opportunity to get a leg up and to build into your life something that's going to serve you well. And while you're doing your questions, and I can see some off here to the left that are coming up now, but what are some strategies, Rory, that people can use to develop more self-discipline or to become better at it? Besides the one you just shared.
Yeah, well, asking the question how, and I liked your question too, Michael. That was really, really good. Another one, and this gets, again, it hits at a core misconception people have about self-discipline. It kind of comes back also to the paradox principle, which is what the Buffalo story is all about. It's the chapter on sacrifice in Take the Stairs. Is you learn to leverage long-term vision to endure short-term sacrifice. In fact, the amount of our endurance or the amount of our self-discipline is directly proportionate to the clarity of our vision. So when we have a crystal clear picture of what we want for our life or for our future or for our marriage or for our book, right? Like when we can see it clearly and we spend a lot of time thinking about it, then that creates this naturally strong connection to the sacrifices I'm asking myself to make today. It creates a context for action to take place. And so my discipline engages automatically. It's not like I have to motivate myself. It's I activate as a byproduct of having that vision. If I don't have a clear vision, or I do have a clear vision, but I don't spend much time thinking about it, then there is at best this sort of fuzzy, kind of disconnected, convoluted connection, right, to this sacrifice that I'm asking myself to make today. So there's no reason, there's no payoff to make them, and so I don't. I default to whatever is most convenient here and now, which is, by the way, part of our the neuroscience of our brain. You know, we're not our brain is not programmed for success; it's programmed for survival. In fact, Don Miller, another one of our mutual buddies in StoryBrand, talks about this, that people are basically lazy, and our brain is designed to help us, not that we're lazy, but to conserve energy. We try to conserve energy, but that's a survival mode. That's not a success mode. And so a lot of this has to be a trained mechanism. So anyways, a lot of times when people say, I struggle with self-discipline, well, a lot of times we start working with them one-on-one, and they'll say, well, I've always struggled with discipline with my weight or my finances or with sales or whatever. And we find it's not that they struggle as much from a lack of discipline as they do from a lack of vision. They don't have a clear enough picture of what they want for their life, and so there is no reason to make the sacrifices. So in terms of an action item, right, it is to simply spend time clarifying the vision. And it doesn't have to be some fancy drawn-out process. It's like take 5 minutes and write out in as excruciating detail as possible, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? Or what do you want your life to be like in this quarter? Or, you know, to your friend, where does she want to go? And the more she thinks about what would 30 days be like in Italy or wherever, and then in the moment when you don't feel like doing the thing you know you should be doing, you call upon that vision, meaning you either think about it or you read it or you look at your vision board or you look at your phone or whatever you have as a representation of that. And that puts you sort of in the state of that long term, and that helps you endure the short term sacrifice. So it's not as much that we struggle from a lack of self-discipline as we do from a lack of vision. Clarify the vision and you will activate the discipline.
I love this insight. So I'm just going to summarize it here, how I understand, or what I understood you to say. So sometimes when you're struggling with self-discipline, instead of working on trying to gin up more self-discipline, maybe work a little bit harder in getting clarity about the thing you want, and then you're going to find the self-discipline is going to come much more easily. Is that fair?
Yes.
That is awesome.
And there's so many examples, and we think, I got to muster up the willpower, right? We think I got to rev up to get going. And in reality, all you have to do is remind yourself about your why, and all of that shows up as a byproduct.
Fantastic. Okay, we got some comments coming in. Guys, continue to leave your comments. We'll get to them, but I'm going to get to a few of them right now. So Donald Newman on Facebook asked, how did you lose 40 plus pounds? What was your challenge, and how did you overcome it?
That is the big question. So it's actually very, very simple. Simple, not necessarily easy. So here's what I did. I decided that I was never going to drink alcohol again. I was never going to have carbonated beverages again. I was never going to eat fast food again, never eat dessert again, and I was going to work out every single day until I hit my goal. Once I hit my goal, then I could start introducing some of those things back in moderation. But in fact, I'm going to write a blog about this. This is such a good question. I think cheat days are so stupid. I think cheat days are the dumbest, worst advice that you could ever give somebody. And the whole idea is that you typically don't balance your way into achieving great things. You typically imbalance your life for a short term, what we would refer to in Take the Stairs as a season. And rather than sort of, pursuing so balance is kind of an interesting concept long term, but in the short term, we're usually imbalancing our focus in one direction to accomplish one very specific goal. Then once you've accomplished that goal, it's typically much easier to sort of lower the intensity and maintain a level of operational success, and then imbalance the excess focus that you have in the direction of some other goal or some other pursuit. And one of the big things we say at Southwestern Consulting all the time is that success is never owned, success is only rented, and the rent is due every day. Success is never owned, success is rented, and the rent is due every day. And so I actually took that on to say, I'm going to pay the price every single day until I get to where I want to go. So it took me about 6 months. I ran for 20 minutes a day and didn't have any alcohol, no dessert, no fast food, and no carbonated beverages. And that was, at this point, 13 years ago. I now eat dessert every day. I do. It's like one of the things I do. I eat dessert every day, but I also still, I actually work out now every single day, but only for like 12 to 15 minutes. I'll tell you practical. So here's my actual game that I play, just to put this into practice.
Yeah,
so
please.
I operate on something called the Not Bad. I call it the Not Bad program. And it's a 5-point system. It's a game that I play every day. And I get a point for not being bad, for not eating bad. And so the B stands for bread. So that's anything like bread or potato chips, anything with like carbs, basically. The A is for alcohol. So if I don't have any alcohol, I get a point for that. The D is for dairy. So if I don't have any cheese or milk or ice cream. And then it's the second D, so it's bad, B-A-D-D, is for dessert. So I get 4 points related to my diet. And then if I exercise for at least 15 minutes, I get the 5th point. And so every day, I try to get 5 points. And, usually if I get 3 points or something, I'm gonna do pretty good. And, we have a 1-month-old baby. So AJ and I haven't been drinking at all. So I've been getting that point every day since we got pregnant, because we practiced this, did the solidarity thing. And I'm not sure I'll go back actually now, because it's just, I've gotten so used to it, and I've been exercising just a little bit though. But again, the beauty about it, and this is one thing you find when you change your programming, is that you don't have to work out 8 hours every day to be in great shape. You can work out a few minutes. I mean, literally, I'm talking about, I do maybe 3 sets of 20 push-ups, something like that. I might do a couple hundred sit-ups, or, I might do some squats if I'm in a hotel room or something. And that's it, but it's every single day. Now, you don't have to do it every day. That's just the game I play, and it's part of trying to be a practitioner of what we talk about. Success is never owned. It's rented, and the rent is due every day. But
that's cool.
But the big idea is imbalance for a short defined period to create this massive breakthrough, this massive result. Then you can put that into maintenance mode and dedicate 100% of the excess energy or focus into something else, into the next thing perhaps.
That's fantastic. Okay, you cannot believe how many questions are coming in. I mean, we weren't getting any at first, but now they're running like crazy.
I never get questions.
So this is a great thing about live. Okay, so this is on Facebook. This is from James Hyatt, spelled the same way as my name, but no relation that I know of.
No relation.
He says, I know exactly what to do, yet I'm stuck in a mental block. How do I move forward and level up my thinking to move forward?
Gosh, this is so good. Okay, so you asked the right question, which is, how do I level up my thinking? That is the right question, because we build prisons of our own construction, and it's all about our thinking. So how do you change your thinking? It's actually very, very simple. It's a matter of repetition. The human brain is like a computer. Your brain does not believe what is true or what is false. Your brain makes no distinction about truth or false, positive or negative. Your brain believes whatever you tell it most often. That's it. Your brain believes whatever you tell it most often. So the action step here, okay, again, we're almost like rolling through our coaching curriculum. So I'm going in my head like, okay, here's what the action step would be. This is where, like, if the vision step was we would create the vision board and all that, this is the next thing is we would create a list of affirmations. So you figure out what is the limitation you're experiencing. Answer Michael's question. What would have to be true in order for what I want to have to come true? And you write that out. And if you were being that person, or if you were living that way, if that was your world, what would be true about you? And you write that down, and then you read it. And you read it every single day. You read it as a part of your morning routine. So when I wake up, my alarm goes off. First thing every morning, I say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, like instantaneously. Thank you. I thank God for my wife. I thank God for, in my case, Jesus Christ. I thank God for my family, and I go through everything I'm thankful for. Then the first thing I do is I read Scripture. I want Scripture to be the first medium into my brain. I don't want Twitter. I don't want email. I want Scripture to be the first thing in. You do the same thing.
I do.
And then I will read. I'll read my goals, and I'll read my affirmations. And my affirmations are whatever. It's funny. Like, my affirmations are really simple. It's all of the things that I perceive as weaknesses right now, reverse engineered as things that I'm turning in to be strengths. I write them as strengths, and then I read them. And so what happens? I read them, and the first time I read them, I go, yeah, that's not true. Yeah, that's not true. I mean, I must have said 1,000 times I'm a New York Times bestselling author. At least said that to myself 1,000 times before I ever even started to think, how could that be possible? And then you start taking the steps, and then, one day it happens. So create that list of affirmations based on your weaknesses, based on the things you're scared of. Write the opposite of it, and you read it. And so there's 2 times specifically when I read them. I read them in the morning, and then, just to be completely transparent, I read them when I'm scared. Whenever I am scared, when I feel weak, when I feel uncertain, when I feel underconfident, I pull up my affirmations, and in my case, I keep them all on my phone on my little notes pad, and I read them. And so it only takes a few seconds, but then I read them, and then I act.
I do the same thing. I've got some general affirmations, and in my course, 5 Days to Your Best Year Ever, we help people identify their limiting beliefs and then transform them into liberating truths, and then use them as a series of affirmations. And so, like you, I've got some general ones, but then, like, before I ever take the stage in public speaking, I've got a whole series of those that I have in Evernote, or before I record a podcast, or any of these situations where there's something really at stake. Before I write something, then I'll have a series of affirmations that just remind me that this just isn't some task. There's a larger context. There's more at stake, and I want to bring my A game to that situation. Okay, I'm going to go on to some more questions here. So many. This one's from Periscope. Misty Garcia said, how do you find your why?
Okay. So I literally wrote a blog article about this, I think, like last week, in terms of how do you find your why? Let me look it up actually and see what the heck I said, because it was really good. And
by the way, I do that all the time.
What's that?
Well, I'll think, okay, I think I wrote something on this, and then I'll look it up, and I'll go, oh yeah, I did write something on this. So it's helpful. That's why I blog, I think, to remember.
I'm pretty sure I learned that from you, because you're like, anytime anybody asks you a question, you just write a blog about it, and then you have the answer there for ever. You can pull it up. Yeah. So this was actually one of our coaches, Steve Reiner. I interviewed him on our podcast, and then they're really his ideas. Yeah. It was March 31st was the post, and it's there's.
Can you give us the link?
Yeah. Can I actually, can I post it on your Facebook page, Michael?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
I know she's on Periscope. I don't know how to do that. So let me pop into your Facebook page.
My team's behind the scenes. They can post it on Periscope too.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, so I'll give you two of them. So one of them is it's 6 characteristics of a great life purpose statement. This isn't really mine. This is from Steve Reiner. This is I'm completely stealing from one of our coaches. And then there's
but at least you're giving
one,
him credit.
Yeah, that's right. And then there's another one we wrote called 20 Whats to Find Your Why. It's a series of 20 questions that you ask yourself.
Fantastic.
And if you answer each of these 20, the idea is that you'll find your why. So I'm going to post those there. Okay. So you can read more about those. But the only thing, the biggest thing I want to say about this, and this was a pretty big epiphany, was that I've spent so much of my life trying to pursue like happiness, or trying to pursue success, or trying to accomplish things, right? And people say, how do I be happy? And I don't know exactly when the light bulb came on for me. It was something that I read somewhere, and I wish I remembered exactly what it was. But the idea was, they said, people have this all messed up. We think we go in search of pursuit of meaning for our life or happiness for our life. In other words, we go in search of finding something that will give meaning or happiness to our life. And they said what you should do is go in search of people that you can serve, and happiness and meaning will show up as a byproduct. Don't go in search of finding meaning or purpose for your life. Go in search of finding people that you can serve, and meaning and purpose will show up as a byproduct.
Powerful.
And again, I don't know exactly where I actually think it was like an 8-word Instagram post or something that I saw, and it just really like clicked in my head. But I think, again, this is something from Southwestern's culture, and we say a lot, it's hard to be nervous when your heart's on service. It's hard to be nervous when your heart's on service. And so you only feel fear, you're only scared, you're only unmotivated when you're thinking about yourself. Right?
So
like
true.
when I'm thinking about my goals, I want to be a New York Times bestselling author, I want to accomplish this, like that creates pressure and fear and like anxiety and like a lot of weight. But when all you do is you focus on serving and you go, how can I serve? All that pressure goes away. It's hard to be nervous when your heart's on service. And so it's finding other people to serve that's the game changer. And I hate to admit it, but I really think I spent like the first, I'm 34 now, so I think I spent like the first 33 and a half years of my life like being a pretty self-centered like guy, and it just took me a long time for that light to click on.
That is so good. I can tell you that a big shift happened for me in my public speaking when I made that exact shift, because I used to always think, are they going to like me? Am I going to be funny enough? Is this going to be insightful? What are they going to say to their friends? It's all about me. But once I started shifting, and this is actually what the affirmations do that I read before I start speaking, is once I started focusing on them, how can I serve them? What are they feeling? What are their needs? How can I be useful? Everything changed. I stopped being nervous, and it was almost like a light switch. But anyway, hugely helpful. Look, our time is going so fast, Rory. It's unbelievable. But I got to have you tell this. Tell the story about how you got your first book deal, and then kind of draw out a few lessons from that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, the real story is a long story, and it's written in its entirety in Procrastinate on Purpose. But the bottom line is, okay, so it all started where we came up. I knew that self-discipline was going to sort of be my message and passion and topic. And then a good friend of mine, a coach of mine and a mentor named David Avrin, he was the one that helped come up, and not helped. He came up with Take the Stairs. Take the Stairs was his idea. He was the one that said, dude, Take the Stairs is the title of your keynote, your brand, your book. Like, that's going to change everything. And so I owe so much to Dave. And so I thought, gosh, the first time I had the thought I want to be a New York Times bestselling author, I thought, no way, impossible. So I went to the Barnes & Noble bookstore, and I went to the business section, and I pulled off all these books. And they were all the bestsellers, right? So it's like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within, I think it was called.
Yep.
And, John Maxwell, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and all these books. I think The Energy Bus was on there. And, anyways, I'm flipping through several of these books, just trying to look at them and go, I wonder what does it take to write a book that becomes a New York Times bestseller? And I'm looking in the acknowledgments section, and I notice it has this literary agent listed, the same woman in several of these books for T.D. Jakes, Joel Osteen, Stephen Covey, Tony Robbins. And in the acknowledgments, it says, I'd like to thank my literary agent. I'll leave her name out. But it says this. And so I was like, this is the person for me. So I was like, I got to find this woman, and I got to meet her because maybe she can show me how to do this. So I look her up online, and it says on her website, not accepting new author submissions. Please do not contact us. So I find their phone number, and I call them, and nobody answers. And I leave a voicemail. And then I send an email, and no response. And then I get this book called How to Write a Winning Book Proposal. And I go through this whole book, and I create a book proposal, and I mail it to them. And just no response whatsoever. And this goes on for 6 months. By the way, at some point to this story, I'll tell you later, actually. So I realized that if I have a chance with this woman, I'm going to have to meet her in person. And so I book a flight to Dallas, which is where her office is. And I don't know how I found the address, but I found it somewhere. And I went to flew to Dallas, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I can catch her for 5 minutes as she's walking into her office. So I go to her office. I get there at 4 a.m. because I'm like, I don't know what time this lady gets to work, but I'm sure it's probably early. And I have to be there before she gets in, otherwise I'm hosed. So I get there at 4 a.m., and I'm sitting outside their office door with my book proposal in hand. And I'm not kidding. The day that I am there, Michael, she is out of town. She is not there. I have booked this plane ticket to go. But a young woman shows up, and she was kind of, scared at first, which I can't really blame her, right? And her name is Nina. And so Nina comes up, and she was really nice, and she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I've been here since 4 a.m. I flew from Nashville. I know you're not accepting new author. Just nervous as can be. And anyways, Nina spent about 5 minutes with me. She says, Rory, I really like you. I really want to applaud you for your effort. It's not that we don't like you. It's just that we could never work with you. You could never be a part of our agency because you don't have a big enough, and I'm not making this up, Michael. This is the word she says, platform. She says, you don't have a big enough platform. And I was like, what's a platform? I mean, I had no idea. I remember being there, and the phone rang, and she's like, I have to go. It's Bloomberg. And at the time, I was 25 years old, and I said to her, what is Bloomberg? I mean, I just was totally clueless. And she's like, Rory, I really like you. But she's like, I'll make you a deal. She's like, I will give you a little bit of feedback on your book proposal if you promise to stop calling us. And you promise to stop leaving us messages. And I was like, okay, sounds good. I'm in. So I didn't hear anything back from her. And then randomly one night at 10:30 at night, maybe 3 or 4 months later, I get this email from Nina. And she's like, hey, do you still want feedback? And I was like, absolutely. So I get on the phone with her. She tears my book proposal apart. This sucks, and that would never work, and this is silly, and nobody wants to read that. And but constructive. It wasn't criticizing. It was constructive. And then she says, Rory, I really like you. I wish you the best of luck. We could never work with you. And she says, so take this and good luck. So I take her feedback. I'm working on it. And so then 2 months later, I have all the edits done. And so I send it back to her. And I'm emailing and I'm calling and just no response, total darkness. And AJ, my wife, AJ, we did dinner with you and Gail. AJ got this idea from one of our other business partners, Gary. And so we went to the store and we bought all of this basket with all this instant stuff, instant pudding, instant Jell-O, instant coffee, instant oatmeal. And we put all this instant stuff in a basket with a note that said, hopefully by using these products, you'll get a few extra minutes in your schedule to review our revised book proposal. And we put it in a box and we sent it to her. And she called us the next day. And she was like, that was pretty creative. So we're going to reward the effort. She's like, I will look at this one more time. But then she tells me, but Rory, it's not you. We could never work with you. We like you. We just could never work with you. You don't have a big enough platform. And I was like, it's fine. Just give me the feedback. So she gives me the feedback. We do the edits. No, we get complete darkness. Anyway, some time goes by. Randomly, I'm speaking at an event here in Nashville, and a guy who you and I both know, who's one of the most amazing men in the whole world, who radically changed my life because of this moment, named Robert D. Smith, happened to be in the audience at this event I was speaking at. It was actually for Southwestern, because he sold books for Southwestern when he was in college. He was at the event. He heard me speak. He comes up to me and says, Rory, I think you have what it takes. I think you have the gift. I think you could make it. And I was like, well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. He goes, no, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. He's saying, I would like to help you. And I'm like, well, who are you? And he says, well, have you ever heard of Andy Andrews? And I was like, of course I've heard of Andy Andrews. Like, who hasn't heard of Andy Andrews? And he says, well, I'm, the business manager. And anyways, Robert brings me over to his house, gives me the whole tour, says, what can I help you with? He helps me with the book proposal. About 6 months later, we send the book proposal back to Nina. And then the day after, Nina calls me back with the head of the agency, who will remain nameless here. And they both are on the phone, and they said, Rory, and now keep in mind, Southwestern Consulting had grown tremendously. We had grown from 4 people to about 30 people at that time. We were now a multi-million-dollar business. I had been speaking. I had started blogging. We had a team at Southwestern. So our platform had grown, but we weren't, we didn't have a huge TV show or anything. But anyways, she called me back and said, Rory, we would like to sign you. And that whole journey was about 2.5 years. And then within 6 weeks, we had 14 publishers review the proposal. They started bidding up and up, on it. And then we ended up selling it to Penguin. And then, we wrote the book. Then there's a whole other story for how we executed the launch. But anyways, it hit the New York, hit number 1 on the Wall Street Journal, number 1 on USA Today, and number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. That all in was about 4 years from the idea to what actually happened.
So you were kind of an overnight success. Not.
Not. I was an annoying, pestering, pestilent, persistent, and I did. I learned that. I learned that at Southwestern, that the answer to every problem's behind the next door, and you just have to keep going. That you just got to keep going. And last little thing I wanted to say on this, I sent that book proposal to Thomas Nelson Publishing in the year 2009 when I was trying to get in with this agent, and I was turned down for the Take the Stairs book proposal. And there was a guy named Michael Hyatt who was the CEO, I think, at that time. But hey, it all worked out.
Well, you can bet if I had known that had happened, I would have fired that publisher on the spot. Hey, let's take one more question. We've got a ton of questions, and I know we're really out of time. But if you've got the time, could we just take one more from the audience?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, we'll make it real quick. So this is from Max Nazim on Facebook, who asks, which is the better mover, motivation or inspiration?
What is the better mover, motivation or inspiration? It'd be interesting, Michael, to hear what your take is on the distinction between the two. I would lean towards inspiration, and the reason why is because the word inspire is actually a biblical concept. It means to breathe life into. To breathe life into. And if you believe in the Bible, that's how it says that we were created, that God breathed life into us. And so that's what inspire means. And so I think of motivation as not in a bad way, but more as like a self-centered thing. It's something that I do for myself. Inspiration is something that I'm breathing life into others, or someone has breathed life into me. But in general, I don't know. I don't know exactly how I would. I've never been asked that question. I don't know how I would draw the distinction between those two. Do you have a good idea?
I don't know either. I might go in the opposite direction. I know there are a lot of people that say to me, particularly writers, who say, as soon as I get inspired, I'll start writing. And my experience with that is that inspiration doesn't show up until you do. And so many times, and this kind of dovetails with your whole concept about self-discipline, is that we have to put ourselves in the context, ready to work. And then I get inspired. I find that as I begin with the discipline of writing, then suddenly I get swept up in it, and then I'm inspired, but it rarely happens in the reverse order. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I would agree with that. I actually don't think I would call that motivation. I would call that action. I would call that discipline. It's like action cures fear. Action generates momentum. Action generates inspiration. I think that's a good illustration, and I would 100% agree. I think a purpose is a luxury, not a necessity to get started. A purpose is a luxury. It's not a necessity to get started. It's part of the strategy, I think, to, we talked about leveraging long-term vision to endure short-term sacrifice, but action ultimately is what wins. Like whatever it takes to get you to act, that's all that matters. And you can I have a friend named Roger Sipe who says you can act your way into healthy thinking much easier than you can think your way into healthy acting.
So true.
And ultimately it's like you can have all these strategies and all these distinctions and all these ideas and concepts and fancy illustrations, but it's like at the end of the day you got to take the stairs, baby. Like you just got to do it. You got to, at some point you just go, it doesn't matter if I like it. It's like my mom told me when I was a kid, enjoying it isn't a requirement of doing it.
So good. Well, that's the perfect ending to our show tonight. Rory, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to be with you. Fantastic answers. I learned a lot.
Oh, my buddy, it is a pleasure. It's an honor to be invited. You do such great work, and you give so generously to your audience. And you've made such a difference to me. And you and Gail have been great mentors to me and AJ, and we really admire just the marriage that you have and the influence you have and the relationship you have with the daughters. And you guys are just awesome. So it's an honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Absolutely.
Thank you. And guys, thanks for joining us. If you haven't done so already, let me encourage you to grab a copy of Rory's book, Procrastinate on Purpose. We didn't really talk a lot about procrastination tonight, but that book is terrific. And you can find it on Amazon by going to the link michaelhyatt.com/procrastinate. Yes, that's an affiliate link, but it'll take you directly to the page and save you a few keystrokes. I'm not going to be airing the Michael Hyatt Show next week. Instead, I'm going to be on a vacation with my wife. However, I look forward to talking with you the next week, May the 1st, 7 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to be interviewing New York Times bestselling author Sean Stevenson about sleep, why it's so important, and how to get more of it. So mark your calendar. You don't want to miss that. Share it with your friends, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks again.